First of all, the religious thing came second nature. I grew up in pre-Vatican II Catholicism, and I even attended seminary, and I have a very religious mindset. I am a very religious person. That's not to say I'm a good Catholic, okay? But I am deeply religious, and much of the background that occurs in this novel stems from the experiences that I had either in seminary or in religious training, other religious training. The female part actually I didn't find that difficult at all, and the simple reason for that is that I was raised by my mother, my sister, and my grandmother, and my mother didn't marry my stepfather until I was 10 years old. So I became intimately aware of how women think and react. So it was almost natural for me. You know, I could have written this as a young priest, but I liked the idea of the young nun. First of all, I'm very, very, very convinced that the roles of men and women are really interchangeable in life for the most part. Obviously, there are things that women can do that men can't. They can't have children, we can't, so on. But you know what? There are many, many strong women serving in the military in this country. There are many, many strong women who are on the police force of all the major cities who make a very solid contribution and do a very, very fine job and are very, very professional. And I wanted to portray that because I think the same qualities that would make a woman a good police person, if I may use the politically correct phrase, and it involves the same commitment that would make a woman a good nun. And oddly enough, I found as I'm writing the book, and this to me is one of the most interesting experiences of writing a book, I found myself writing and sitting back and going, oh my God, I can't believe she just did that. I kid you not. I mean, she took on a personality of her own. She was unpredictable. Okay, and that's one of the nicest compliments I've had paid to that book. It's not predictable, and that to me is a compliment. And I almost found myself falling in love with this woman. I mean, I know that's a strange thing to say, but the more she was there, the more I began to like her. And there are several other characters in the book that I became very attached to as well. No, there was something about Margaret that the minute I started writing, she just fell out onto the page. In the 1950s, when I grew up, you weren't born yet, Roy Rogers, Dale Evans, the Lone Ranger, Matt Dillon, we had what I refer to as a black hat, white hat syndrome going on, where the good guy wins, the bad guy loses, and the good guy gets the girl and rides off into the sunset. And that was a very facile, ethical approach to things, and it seemed to suit the understanding that a lot of parents had about their children at the time, that they want them to see a world where good wins and bad loses. This all began to blow up in the 1960s, as you know, with the appearance of movies like Bonnie and Clyde, where all of a sudden you find yourself rooting for these. They really were killers. I mean, there's no question about it. But the movie began to portray these killers as human beings, and you saw a different approach to the characterization of these people. These are no longer just cardboard cutout figures, and that's pretty much how I see the situation. With respect to the murderer, well, murderers. Okay, actually, because, you know, not only do you have the current murder, but you have the murder going back to which this is tied. It doesn't bother me to display their human side, because I think we all tend to what we don't want to realize, maybe this is what I want to say, what we don't want to realize is there but for the grace of God go I. Okay, and in the case of the murderer for the contemporary murders, and you've read the book and you know what I'm talking about, This is a situation where you can look at what happened and you can understand the pain and the confusion and the loss, which he survives and manages to become a decent individual, and what sets him on the path to murder is something beyond his control. Okay, and that, of course, is the crux of the question of where evil comes from. The other murderers were just evil men. Okay, who essentially were very narcissistic, and yet, I believe, I hope, I didn't portray them as cardboard cutouts. You can also see the ever-present humanity in them that made them, one of which was unquestionably an evil man and a murderer, but he was a wonderful neighbor, for example. You know, so I don't buy that theory that no, you don't want to glorify these sorts of things. But I think if you fail to show the humanity of the perpetrator, you run the risk of making them more unreal. And let's face it, in life, I mean, the child molester could be good old Father Joe, it could be good old Scout Leader Bob, it could be the nice guy who lives down the street, or as in the case of Lovely Bones, which is precisely what occurred there. Yeah, you'd like to see justice done in the real world. It doesn't happen, which of course is the case with the murder mystery that is the backdrop for my novel. Justice has never been done in that case, and probably never will. But in order to achieve forgiveness, you have to view people as human beings, worthy of forgiveness. And again, which again argues against, you know, portraying them as one-dimensional characters. And the forgiveness, whatever forgiveness that occurred in this novel toward the murderer, I think occurs in the end with an evaluation of that man's life and character. And yes, forgiveness is very important, because how we forgive will reflect, will determine how we live. And I think nothing has demonstrated this any more powerfully than the shootings at the Amish school in Pennsylvania a few years ago, and the Amish Grace book, which followed upon that. So yeah, I think it does. I mean, but you don't have an opportunity to forgive if you don't get to know them as people. If they're a cardboard cutout, you can knock them down, shoot at them, kick them out of the way, and move on with the sense that you've got the white hat on and good will triumph. It doesn't always happen like that. I have a sequel in the works, and again, you don't want to give anything away, but you will recall that at the end, Sister Margaret finds that she's going to have to go elsewhere, and so the sequel will take place if it gets off the ground. Okay, it has been written, it's currently being revised. Will actually take place in Grafton, Illinois, which along the McAdams Highway, which is probably one of the most beautiful places in the state of Illinois, as far as I'm concerned. And it's a great setting for the storyline, where she begins to continue her her ministry as a Dominican, and of course, naturally gets involved in a murder that has some pretty frightening connotations, and I hope that I'm able to get this off the ground. I haven't liked what I did the first time around, so I redid it. Now I'm redoing it. Problem is time, because I teach here, and even though I'm retired, I have 7 grandkids and a wife who is constantly got me doing stuff. So hopefully it will get, hopefully it will go somewhere.